Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. It had been a month since the new teams had been put together and the new Team 7 was doing much better than the rest. They got missions done in half the time than most of the other teams and had done twice as many as any team had. They had done everything from cleaning up a field for children to play into the most tedious task of catching Tora the cat, which they had done in a record time, for the fire daimyo's wife. Their training and improvement were astounding. They were considered the best genin team since the Sanin and were said to be the team to see go through the Chunin exams on their first try. Anko looked out over her training team and smiled. She felt like she had done something truly amazing in her life. She had trained them into the ground, making them do so much training that at the end of the day that they were lucky to move each day after it. She had them each learning or perfecting something every day. They were given a general workouts every day to strengthen their reserves, strength, chakra control, and precision. They did push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups, and back flips to strengthen muscles. Water walking, tree climbing, and kunai balancing to up their reserves and help with chakra control. Precision in Anko's opinion was her favorite. She would throw kunai at them for them to dodge and them to hit small things off trees. If they missed, they did laps, on their hands, on the lake while Anko throw poison kunais at them. Hinata was being taught water and lightning-based ninjutsu after Naruto had said that those were her elemental affinities. She was learning to combine her ninjutsu into deadly combinations to help neutralize and even hordes of enemies. She was also changing her Juken style to be more fluid with less solid hits than it already had. She was incorporating her style and Anko's style of striking snake to form a style she named Streaming Lily. She still used Juken a lot, but you knew when she was serious when she slipped on her point gloves, as Naruto called them, for the point they made on her fingers and the pain they caused. Naruto had ended up her test dummy and permanent sparring partner due to his healing factor. She would beat the crap out of him, then use healing jutsus to bring him back quicker and do it again. So she got to practice two things at once, fighting and healing. Perfecting both and learning new things all at the same time. Ino was being taught earth and fire-based jutsu from Anko and Alexandra. She learned ninjutsu for more of a defensive and supporting work. She was learning to be the support and interrogator of the team. Anko was teaching her how to use poison, language and torture to interrogate someone if by some unknown reason her mind-walking jutsu did not work. Anko said that she would make Ino into the greatest interrogator in the history of Konoha. She was getting Ibiki to help with her training as well. Anko even went so far as to sneak into her old house and stealing jutsu scrolls from her father for her to copy. She was learning to fight from Anko. She seemed to be made for the striking snake fighting style. She had the thin body and the flexibility to make the style truly effective. Her and Anko would spar and do katas together and stop to correct their formation. Anko had given her twin sickles for her to learn to incorporate into the style. Ino called them her fangs, and loved to pull them out to twirl. Naruto's training by far had been the most unbelievable and biggest payoff. He had an unheard of rate of change. He learned faster than anyone she knew, he got stronger with less training, and he fought like an animal. He had found out that he was an abnormally high wind affinity and a secondary water one. He was learning the two different types of ninjutsu from Anko and Alexandra. He was learning wind jutsu and wind manipulation from Alexandra and water from Anko. He had even started on combining the two to make ice. Anko had taught him the basics of kenjutsu, but, after had told him to go off and figure out his own style. He had been working on it and had even come up with a few moves he called his style, Fox's Claw. It was an attack-based kenjutsu with little to no defense, and it was a style of speed over strength. Alexandra was teaching her personal taijutsu style. Shadow Paw, to Naruto. This style taught strength over speed. It was more about connecting a punch more than where it connected. This style was like the Iron Fist style, more about hurting the body with strong hits then cause precise damage like the Juken. All in all, the training and hard work of her 3 students had been absolutely amazing. She felt happier with these 3 than she had felt since her family's death. They made her laugh, feel happy and strangely at home. Anko did still feel weird around Naruto, but it was not as bad as it was. She still blushed when he called her beautiful and still felt the flutter of her heart when he smiled. She was not sure what the feeling was, but she knew that it could not be bad because Naruto was a good guy. Okay, Runts, it's time to pack it in, she said in her usual gruff tone. The 3 dropped to the ground and took a deep breath. Their sensei had made them jump throw hoops today literally. They were completely worn out and so tired that sleep would be all to eyes for them to reach. Good work today, team. You know where to meet me tomorrow bright and early. Bye. She then disappeared into a swirl of leaves. She always does that. Run us till we almost die then leave us to ourselves, said Ino. Yes, she does, but that is why we are the best there is. She has made us strong, said Hinata. You are right, but does she have to leave us half dead? Naruto said. The 3 laughed as they got up. Alexandra walked up to them and grabbed Naruto. Are you ready to go, master? She said slyly. Yeah, I want to walk today. It is a nice day, and since it is so nice, we can go shopping. Sound good, ladies. The 3 girls nodded and started walking off toward the village with Naruto right there with them. As they walked, talking amongst themselves, through the village, Naruto saw someone make a sudden movement off to the side of them. He reached out and grabbed the kunai out of the air as it was about to hit Ino. Ino's eyes grew wide. She looked at the kunai in Naruto's hand and over to the area it was thrown from. Sitting there on a chair staring at them was her father. I thought you were just air, but now you're a who hangs out with others. Ino started to shake as she looked at her father. Naruto saw this and turned to the man and said in a serious tone, she is nowhere and she is the farthest thing from. Why would she not be? She lives with you, murderer, and your other 2 whores, and you are learning from the snake whore, so of course she is one. Ino was confused. Naruto was no murderer, she thought. Why do you care where I live, who it is with, and who teaches me? You kicked me out with nothing but the clothes on my back. The man looked pissed. Do not back talk me, girl, I am still your father. I do not want our family name soiled by you hanging with this demon. Ino looked confused again. A father does not leave their child alone with nowhere to live or go with nothing but the clothes they are wearing. Do not call Naruto-kun that he is so nice and sweet. I have known more happiness with him in a month than with you in 12 years. Naruto smiled at her. She called me Naruto-kun, I wonder if she realizes it. Her father frowned and started walking toward her. You are going to come back with me and stop being a ninja. You will just embarrass the family name. No, I will never go with you. I am a ninja now and am an adult. I can do what I want, and what I want is to stay with Naruto-kun and be a ninja. You do not have a choice, you are coming with me. He reached out to grab her. Intense pain shoots up his arm and he pulled away from her. He looked at his hand to see a large X on his hand. Naruto held up the kunai that the man had thrown and showed him that there was blood on it. If she says no, that means no. Every time you touch her without her permission, you get a nice scar, and trust me, that will scar. He said, smiling. The man now looked down at the cuts and said, I will get her back, demon, one way or another. Naruto looked at the man with a serious face. Inochi-san, if by some miracle you do get her, I will just go and get her back, and if you hurt her, nothing on this planet will stop me from hurting you in the most horrible way possible. Inochi looked at the boy, then turned and walked away. Naruto smiled and looked at Ino and said in a calm voice, You can stay with us as long as you want, Ino-chan. At those words she burst into tears and hugged him. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Thank you so much. He stroked her blonde locks, murmured welcomes. She pulled away from him and blushed. Sorry, Naruto-kun. It's okay, Ino-chan. He called me Ino-chan. What does that mean? She was blushing a little harder. They continued their walking and stopped from time to time to pick a few things out from stores that tolerated and even liked Naruto. After about an hour they walked back to Naruto's apartment and started making dinner. After a well-made dinner they decided to hit the hay. Naruto walked over to both Hinata and Alexandra and kissed them goodnight. After that he waved goodnight to Ino and lay on the couch to think. The girls walked into the room and shut the door. They each went to a drawer and started to change into their night clothes. Alexandra just took off her clothes except for her panties and laid on the bed. She liked to sleep mostly in the buff. Hinata was down to her underwear and a bra, walked to the closet and put on one of Naruto's shirts. It was a tight fit around the chest but loose around her legs. Ino put on a pair of short shorts and a training bra to sleep in and got in the bed. Ino looked up at the ceiling and after a few minutes started to talk. I need to tell you both something. She said, a little nervous. Go ahead, Willow, we're all ears. Ino sat up and gave Alexandra a death glare, then laid back down. I think I love Naruto. We know, said Hinata in a matter-of-fact voice. Ino sat up again and looked at the two. You know, why are you not angry or hate me? Because we both knew going into it that we would have to share him with 5 others. Alexandra said. 5 others? Ino said, shocked. Yes, he will have 6 girls that will love him and he will love. They will be his mates. We thought you were one for a while now, said Hinata. So I will be his mate. Is that like a wife or something? Yes, but better by about 1,000%. Alexandra said. How is this done and what will happen to me? She said, kind of worried. You would have to bite him on the neck and him bite you. It will leave a tattoo on it. Like this. She pulled her collar down and showed Ino a lavender leaf symbol on her neck and Alexandra showed her the tails on her neck. You will give him your symbol and you get that same symbol. What will happen differs for each of us. Me, I got orange tips, the tattoo, and my eyes became more slits, said Hinata. So I get stronger and I get some sort of physical trait from him. Yes, but you should know that this is forever. You will be his all your life and he will be yours, but you will have to share. So he will love me too. We do not know. You need to talk to him to even see if you are one of them. What if he does not want me? He might kick me out. I don't know what I will do. He is not like that and you know it. Just go out there and one more thing. Tell him I said it was okay for you to sleep there. So go. Hinata grabbed her and pushed her out the door. Ino stumbled and looked back at Hinata. Go and try not to hit anything. Ino walked through the room trying to avoid running into anything. She made it to the couch with little problem. She looked down at the mass sleeping there and got on her knees. Naruto-kun, can I talk to you? As she said it, she reached her hand out and touched him. There was no answer, so she stood up. She then slipped and fell onto Naruto. Naruto awoke to a sudden feeling on his chest. He opened his eyes and saw the silhouette of a woman. Alexandra, go back into the other room. Ino blushed at those words and was trying to get up but slipped again. Naruto-kun, it's me Ino, I kind of fell on you. Naruto sat up and pulled Ino with him. He sat her down next to him and turned on the lamp next to the couch. What's up, Ino-chan? Ino looked at him nervously. I need to tell you something, Naruto-kun. Okay, Ino-chan, go ahead, I'm all ears. Naruto-kun, I love you. She said and covered her face. Naruto smiled at her, then reached up and pulled her hands from her face. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. I want to be with you, Naruto-kun. I want to be your mate too. She flung her arms out and hugged his stomach area. Naruto looked a little stunned that she knew about the mating but figured that Hinata and Alexandra had told her about it. Do you really want to be my mate? Yes, please. I don't want to be without you. You make me happier than anyone in the world. Please make me one of your mates. If that is what you want, I will make you mine, but I have to tell you a few things first. He then proceeded to tell her of have the Kyuubi trapped in him, and that Alexandra was the Kyuubi, that she would have to share him with others. He then looked at her with a serious face. Do you still want to be with me to be my mate? More than I did before. I want you as mine. I do not care. I will do anything you want. He smiled at her and nodded. At that Ino started to jump up and down, then she tackled him and said, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, master." At the word master, Naruto grabbed her shoulders. You do not have to call me that. Alexandra does. Why can't I? He stared her in the eyes and said, Alexandra does it in my opinion as a penance for what she believes is the pain she caused me. She does it to show me that even though she is far more powerful than me, that she will bow to my every whim just to show the man she loves that she is sorry for the pain she caused him. I think I understand. So other than the tattoo and so physical and chakra changes, what can I expect from this mating? Well, you will have eternal youth and never have to worry about any sickness, but you can still die. You're just harder to. You will gain a link with me that will tell me where you are at all times. You will have the urge to be near me whenever you can. Doesn't sound bad to me, she said. This is forever, Ino. You will be mine and me yours. Okay, I understand, so let's do it. Naruto smiled and laughed at her gun-ho attitude. Do you want to bite me first or I bite you? I'll go first if it is okay with you. He turned his neck to the side and said, Leave me something pretty. She leaned into him and grabbed the back of his neck. She pulled him in close and breathed in, smelling ramen and mail. She bent down and bite. Naruto felt the rush overtake him. The feel of Ino push into him as she bite down on his neck. He turned his head and bite left side, starting to channel chakra into it. Ino moaned. She had never felt anything like this in her life. It felt like concentrated chakra and heat. It made her feel turned on. She could feel the dampness between her legs grow. When it became unbearable, she pulled and screamed, Naruto-kun, as she climaxed. Naruto pulled back from her neck and smiled. He licked his lips and looked at his new mate. She had changed more than Hinata or Alexandra had. She had slit eyes, tips that were both purple and orange, her canine teeth had grown sharper and more pronounced, and her eyes became a solid blue like his. Ino smiled at him and said, My love. My mate. She then kissed him hard, grabbing the back of his neck and pulling him into her. He was thinking for a second, she kisses like Yami. He kissed her back and Ino moaned. She went for his shirt but he stopped her. She looked at him with lust in her eyes. She want him badly. Why not? I want you. She then looked down, and it seems you want me too. He looked down and noticed the tent he was sporting. I am sorry, I would love to, but Hinata will be my first. Okay. She looked disappointed but nodded. She got off him. She walked into the bathroom and turned on the light. Naruto looked over after a minute and saw her staring at something on the wall. He got up and walked over and peered in to see her staring at herself. He put his arms around her and whispered to her, You look amazingly beautiful. She looked more closely at herself. He was right, she was even more beautiful. The tips made her blonde hair stand out, her eyes were like his solid blue but a lighter blue than his, and her teeth were longer and sharper. She looked over it and noticed a flower where Naruto had bitten her. She stared at the flower. It was a purple snapdragon with blue lining. She then looked at Naruto and saw the same thing on his neck, but one of the tails from the tattoo that went around his neck stretched out and touched the flower, and circling the tail was a vine. They walked back into the living room and sat down. Ino looked at Naruto, Can I stay out here with you tonight? I do not think it is okay. Hinata is to be my first in all things. Hinata said I could sleep with you tonight. Did she really? I guess if she said it was okay then you can. Ino smiled and hugged him. Naruto laid down and Ino laid next to hugging him to her. I love you Naruto. Good night Ino-chan. Good night Naruto-kun. They kissed and slowly drifted off to sleep. The next morning out front of the Hokage Tower the gang sat waiting for their crazy sensei. Ino was looking over at her changes still admiring them. What happened to Willow? Everyone looked over to see Anko standing by the steps to the Hokages. She got a makeover, said Naruto smiling. Anko stared at him confused. Makeover? Yes, Ino is one of my lovers now. Anko looked over at Ino with slightly hard eyes. Naruto smiled. If he didn't know better he would say she looked jealous. He decided to tease her a little. You could join them sensei, you would be more than welcome. Anko looked over at him and blushed. Let's go and get our missions for the day so we can train. She turned and started to walk up the stairs. They reached the Hokage's office and knocked. Enter, said a young familiar voice. They entered the room to see the Hokage sitting at his desk with their old sensei Iruka sitting next to him. What can I do for Team 7 today? We came to get our mission Hokage-sama, said Anko as she bowed. Hopefully something more fun, old man. I am tired of the cat and painting houses. We need something more challenging. Naruto shows some respect to the Hokage, said Iruka. The Hokage laughed. Okay. How about AC ranked out of the village? Sound good? Yes please. I could use it. Hokage-sama, they are not ready for AC ranked yet, they are fresh from the academy. Iruka-san, my team is more than ready for AC ranked mission. They are not the same kids you taught in the academy. Anko stared at the man as she said it. Iruka looked her, not believing that these three, once considered the three weakest in the class, could have changed that much. He stared at the three each in turn and noticed small changes but nothing that could show that they were changed other than appearance. Iruka, I believe Anko is right. They train hard and do more mission than even some of the seasoned Chunin do. Iruka nodded to the leader of the village. Your mission is to escort this man back to Wave. Tazuna-san, you can come in now. A man entered the room with a bottle in one hand and a bat in the other. He was about as tall, if not a little taller, than Anko. He had a beer belly that made it look like he was smuggling a keg in his shirt. He had gray hair and a goatee. He was wearing a straw hat and a small pair of spectacles on the bridge of his nose. These runts are going to protect me. They look like they could not protect a mouse from a cat. That boy there looks like he could not win a fight with his shadow. Tazuna blinked, and when he looked back, the red head that was standing behind the blonde boy had disappeared. He felt something around his neck. He turned to see that the red head was standing behind him and had her hands around his throat. My master is very strong. Do not insult him again or I might have to hurt you. Trust me. Alexandra, stop and come here. As if by command, the red head, now known as Alexandra, let go of Tazuna and walked back to the blonde and kneeled before him. He reached out and touched her cheek. No threatening the client, okay? Sorry, master. He kissed her forehead and helped her up. By now Tazuna felt kind of weird about the show. Did they practice slavery in Konoha? Shaking the thought from his mind, he turned back to the leader of this village. We accept the mission, Anko said. Good, you are dismissed, but Naruto, can you stay behind for a few minutes? I would like to talk to you in private. Sure, old man. Anko turned to the team. We will meet at the north gate in an hour and a half. They all nodded before leaving the room. When they were all out, the Hokage turned to Iruka and said, Go take a break, Iruka. Come back in a half an hour and we will continue. Hi Hokage-sama. Uruka turned and walked out the room. So Naruto, I noticed the change in Ino. What happened to her? She decided she wants to be with me. So I gave her a gift. Okay. What did her father say to that? He said nothing. He kicked her out. She is living with me and the girls has been for over a month. Well, her father is petitioned to marry her off to the Uchiha. I cannot let that happen. She is with me now and she is her own person. When her father kicked her out, he gave up the right to give her to anyone, and I will fight anyone I have to keep her. I understand. I denied it and told him the same. He was very angry. Said the Hokage with a snicker. Thank you, OJJ-san. How is your? I'll get you now, old man. Said a boy who burst in with a shuriken in his hand. The Hokage smiled. The boy went to throw the shuriken when he tripped. Naruto looked at the boy with his mouth agape. Hey you. You tripped me. No, you tripped on that long scarf. You shouldn't wear it, or at least wrap it tighter. He grabbed his scarf and wrapped it tighter. I wear it the way my mother put it on me. Don't tell me what to do. It is great that she put it on you like that, but you need to secure it or you could get it caught. As he said this, he walked up and kneeled in front of the boy. He reached out and adjusted the scarf so it wrapped around his neck and then around his waist. There, it should help, okay? The boy looked up at him. Who are you? Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. He stuck his hand out and shook the younger boy's hand. My name is Konohamaru. The boy looked kind of confused. Why are you being nice to me? Is it 'cause I am the Hokage's grandson? Naruto looked back at the old man. He's your grandson? Yes. He is my daughter's son, he said sadly. Naruto looked at the little boy and smiled. The kid had lost his parents, he knew that. Is that all you needed, old man? Yes, you can go. Come on, Konohamaru. They walked out of the room. When they made it out of the tower, he turned to the little boy. How about I train you? Really? He said with a smile. Yeah, I want to ask you some questions. Okay. How many friends do you have? None. Do you have anyone you love, someone you want to protect? Other than the old man and the memories I have of my parents, no. Okay, for me to train you, I want you to do 3 things, okay? Anything. I want you to make 3 friends and to work on this with them. Naruto handed him a scroll. Konohamaru opened it and he smiled. You need to have it done when I get back, okay? If you do that, I will train all 3 of them too. Okay, boss, will do. The boy then ran off towards the ninja academy cackling. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. 2 hours later, the 3 girls and Naruto sat at the gate and waited. They're half an hour late. Where are they? We're right here. Found the bastard at a bar drinking his weight in sake. Anko was walking up dragging the client behind her. She reached them and looked them over. Ready to go. As ready as we will ever be. The team had been walking for over an hour. They stayed in the diamond formation and were talking amongst themselves. What's wave like, Tazuna? Asked Ino. It's a beautiful place, or was. It's surrounded by crystal clear ocean water. The town is small, but its people are some of the best I have ever met. Sounds like a paradise on earth, said Hinata. Yes. They kept talking as they walked on the path to wave. Naruto was talking to Hinata when he stopped talking and activated his Seikigen. Looking out of the corner of his eyes, he sees a puddle. He looked left to Alexandra and nodded, then disappeared. Tazuna turned around to see Alexandra reaching down into a puddle. Confused as to what the redhead was doing, he watched. Her arms disappeared into the puddle, and as she brought them out, he was shocked to see a man in each of her hands. The men looked at the woman now holding them up in the air. They both started kicking, trying to get out of this redhead's hands. She turned and threw them at a blue-haired girl. As they neared her, they felt jolts to their bodies, feeling like needles hitting them. When they landed behind the girl, they tried to get up, but nothing happened. Don't try to get up, gentlemen. The lovely lady to my right has made that impossible, so please sit back and tell me everything, said Naruto soundly like someone working at a spa. The two men were flipped over by a purple-haired woman in a trench coat. They stared over to the young man who must have been the one to tell them to talk. We won't tell you nothing, said the man on the left. Okay, then you asked for it. Anko stepped up and raised her right arm. Snakes came out her sleeves and bite the man on the left on his arm. You got about 5 minutes, then you die, Anko said with a sadistic smile. The man looked at her in the face and said, I don't believe you, and even if I did I would not tell you. As the seconds went by, the man started to sweat. After about a minute he started to vomit. His teammate looked on in horror as his partner started to bleed out of his nose. Just tell them it is not worth it, please, brother. Never, he said as he started to cough up blood. Very brave man, I commend you, but you got about 1 minute before you start to beg for death, said Naruto. Okay, I'll tell you everything, just please keep him alive. Naruto nodded to Ino. She walked up to the man and pulled out a syringe and injected him with a blue liquid. There, now talk. The man started to talk, telling them of everything. He told them out his job to the bridge builder, that a man named Gato had hired them, that he had other ninja working for him too, that the man had an arm of thugs and samurai, and that his favorite color was red. Anko nodded, then walked up to the two men and knocked them out. She grabbed the chain that was tying them together at the gauntlets on their hands and tied them to a tree. She then looked over at Tazuna. You got some explaining to do. Tazuna sat by a tree and told them everything. When he finished, he looked at them. Please, we need your help. You could save hundreds and earn the respect of our village. Anko turned to her team. We got to decide if we are going to do this. If we do, I got to send for reinforcements. Her team looked at one another and then nodded to Anko. She pulled out a scroll and started writing. After about 5 minutes, she pulled out another scroll and channeled chakra into it. A bird popped out of the scroll and Anko tied the scroll to it. The bird flew off and Anko turned back to her team, and now we play the waiting game. Naruto pulled out a pack of cards and said in a happy voice, anyone up for some poker? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Alexandra. Ino and Hinata had opted out after losing 10 kunai each. Naruto looked at Anko and said, "Care to make this hand interesting? What did you have in mind? The losers have to do what the winner wants, anything the winner wants, no matter what." Anko and Alexandra both snickered. Anko looked at her hand. She had 2 pair aces with a queen kicker. Alexandra looked down and frowned. She had 3 kings. She knew she had this one. "Deal," they both said in unison. "Okay ladies, show me what you got." Anko put down her hand and smiled. "Damn good hand, Anko-sensei." Alexandra smiled, then put down her hand. "You're mine, master," and you to Anko-sensei. "Damn, it looks like you got me beat, Alexandra, unless." Naruto then showed his hand. It was a royal flush, all red hearts. Alexandra and Anko were slack-jawed. Alexandra was the first to recover. "I am yours, master, do what you like." She smiled seductively. Anko was still slack-jawed. "Well, blonde, you win. What do you want?" "Alexandra, all I want is a kiss from you." She walked over to him, swaying her hips more than she had to. She leaned over and kissed Naruto passionately. She made a show of it by falling into his lap and wrapping her arms around him. Tazuna was in shock that this boy had a woman much older him basically mouth raping him in front of his sensei and client, not to mention other girls that seemed to be with him. Alexandra pulled back from him. That was tasted. She leaned into him to go for another when he said, "I need to get my something special from Anko now." She pouted. "Okay master, but I want more later." Naruto nodded to her. Anko, please follow me, I got something special for you. At this, Anko looked nervous but got up and followed him. If the team comes, tell them I had to have a private talk with Naruto, okay? The team nodded but the girls looked furious. Naruto turned and stared at them. Do not fret, I will keep my promise. The girls smiled at that and started talking amongst themselves. Tazuna was wondering what this promise was but was wondering more about what the boy was going to do with his teacher. He started having images of what the two could be doing and started to giggle with some blood flowing out of his nose. Naruto walked deep into the woods with Anko following right behind him. When he felt they were far enough away, he turned to her. She looked at him a little nervous. So what do I have to do? Naruto smiled. Show it to me. Anko looked at him and went to the hem of her shirt and began to pull it up. She got to her navel and Naruto grabbed her hand. Not that the other it. Anko then grabbed the top of her skirt and started to slide out of it. Naruto grabbed her hand again and shook his head. Show me your curse seal. Anko looked shocked. How do you know about the seal? Sometimes when we are sparring and you use too much chakra, I see you grab your left shoulder. Once you grab it, a look of pain crosses your face, then you get a burst of black-purple chakra from nowhere. Anko stared up into his blue eyes. Do you know how I got it? No, I do not care where you got it. It looks to be causing you pain and it hurts me to see you in pain. She took off her trench coat and slid the left side of her shirt sleeve down. It was given to me by my old sensei Orochimaru. I was his apprentice and I guess you could say he was my hero. He took me in after my family died, he was like a father. I went with him everywhere and did everything I could to be the best for him. She began to cry lightly. I am going to look over it, okay, so stand still but keep talking. She nodded and continued. We went on a mission together to Ocean Country, just us together. It was great, we laughed and trained. When we got there, he told me that we were going to one of his bases to see some researcher that a friend of his was doing. We got on a boat and went out to this island right off the coast. We walked till we found this weird snake-like mouth and we walked inside. She shivered and Naruto looked at her in the eyes. Go ahead. Then he went back to touching and poking the seal. When we got to a door, he knocked. A man came to the door and let us in. When we walked in, I looked around and saw these tubs with people in them. He started talking to the man who led us in and I just walked around and looked at these people. It was the most horrible thing I have ever seen. They looked like they were being changed into fish. I stared at them each in turn and when I came to the last one I actually vomited. And it was a girl of maybe 2 or 3 and as I stared at her she opened her eyes. They looked like she was in real pain, so I grabbed a wrench of a work table and ran at it ready to break it open when I was grabbed and taken off to another room. When we got there I looked to see who grabbed me and it was my own sensei. He looked down at me as I tried to ask him why he was doing this. He said, to be the strongest, then his neck extended and he bite me. I screamed then passed out. When I awoke I crawled from the room and ran back to Konoha. Naruto looked at her and tear went down his cheek. I understand betrayal. He then smiled at her. You know what I am, don't you? She nodded. I understand your pain more than anyone could. I have seen you walking around the village and being talked bad about. I have heard the names they call you and seen the things they throw at you. You are not alone, Anko-sensei. I know we are very much the same. She looked at this boy, someone that was a little more than half her age, and cried. After a good 3 minutes they pulled away from each other. I can remove the mark. Anko was ecstatic. How? Do not worry of the how, just do you want it off? Yes. Please do it. Naruto put his right hand on the seal and said, this is going to hurt. Just don't pull away. Anko nodded. Naruto started channeling some of his chakra into the seal, then after a few seconds started channeling his tail chakra into it. Anko felt a tingling feeling at first, then it started to burn. She hissed in pain and clenched her teeth. After about a minute, Naruto pulled his hand away. He fell to his knees next to her and panted. She was worried, so she bent down to see if he was okay. He turned his head, looked up at her and smiled. That hurt like a bitch. Anko laughed. Yes, it did. So is it gone? Naruto raised his right hand and showed her his palm. On it was her curse seal mark. Does that mean you have it now? She said, worried that she had just cursed her student. No, I just got the mark. Why'd its influence within the first 2 minutes, the last minute was to remove it so you would never have to see it every day of your life and remember your pain. Anko was stunned that Naruto had thought that much as to worry about her remembering it. She got down on her knees and grabbed him by his collar. Are you mad at me, Anko-sensei? No. Then she pulled him into a passionately strong tongue wrestling kiss. Naruto's eyes were wide and he was a little confused, but after a minute he started getting into. After a few minutes they pulled away from each other. Got any other cursed marks for me to remove? He smiled. She looked at him and smiled. She then hit him on the head. Baka. She got up and put her trench coat on. We got to go back. Naruto got up and started walking back to the group with Anko right behind him. As they neared the road, Naruto looked up to see that the other team had made it. He looked closer to see who the team consisted of when he noticed that one of the new people was on their back with Alexandra stepping on him. He walked up when he noticed what team it was. It was Kurenai's team, and at seeing that Naruto cursed. Let him up please, Alexandra. She bent down and looked ready to hurt him bad. Alexandra now. She went rigged and stepped off him. Sasuke got up off the ground and walked towards Alexandra. He raised his hand and brought it down to smack her. He was almost there when his stopped mere inches from her face. He looked back to see a very angry Naruto standing there holding his wrist with his Dojutsu blaring. If you ever, and I mean ever, raise your hand to strike any woman and I find out, I will take this hand. If I were you, I would beg me not to let her have you, cause there would be nothing left. Sasuke pulled his hand back. Do not touch me, Dobi. He raised his hand back and smacked Naruto. Stop. Beg for it, Dobi, and I will. Not you, idiot. I was talking to them. Sasuke turned around to see Alexandra with a kunai ready to stab him, Ino with her sickles going for his neck, Hinata with her pointy gloves on ready to hit his heart, and Anko's snakes an inch in front of his face. He just saved your life. Please, master, let me him. Alexandra begged. No, it is okay, but that is the only time you are ever allowed to hit me again. Got it. Sasuke was shaking but turned to look at him. Whatever. Naruto turned back to the girls and smiled. They came up to him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Sasuke hit all but Anko. Anko turned to Kurenai. Let's go, everyone, pair up. Naruto, you in the middle. Sasuke, pair with Shino and go to the right. Sasuke was leaning towards Alexandra but turned and walked to Kiba. Anko stayed up front with Kurenai. Ino and Hinata went to the left. Alexandra stayed to the back, and Naruto stayed next to Tazuna. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX there. So when will our ride get here? Said Ino. There. Tazuna pointed out on the water, and out from the mist came a small dinghy. That will not carry us all, Shino said in his drawl voice. As the boat made it to shore, Naruto looked around at everyone. Everyone in the boat but me and Alexandra. Why? How are you going to get there, Naruto-kun? Asked a worried Hinata. Naruto looked at her and smiled. We're going to walk there. That is impossible, there is no way to walk there. Our village is on an island and it would take too long to get another boat here without getting caught by one of Gato's boats, said the boatman. Naruto put on his foxy grin. Trust me, we will get. Just cast off. The man cast off and started to row. As they made their way from the shore, they saw Naruto take a running start and jump. He was flying towards the side of the boat when they heard, "Cannonball." Everyone turned their heads and raised their hands to block the inevitable spray of water, but it never came. They looked over to see Naruto standing next to the boat with a huge shit-eating grin on his face. "Got ye." The girls stared to laugh. That's when Alexandra walked up to him. "That was not funny, Naruto-kun," said Ino and Hinata at the same time, pouting. That's when they realized that he was walking next to them, when they were on a boat, in the ocean. They all looked over the edge to see him walking on water. Kiba looked at him. "What are you?" "A ninja of the leaf, of course," he said, smiling. "How are you doing that?" asked Sasuke with a power-hungry look in his eyes. "Chakra on the feet, of course," he said, smiling. "If a dobe like you can do it, then a prodigy like me can do it, no sweat." Sasuke then jumped out of the boat and right underwater. Naruto started cracking up. He looked down at the sputtering form of Sasuke. "Never try something you have never practiced, cause you could end up all wet." When they got to the shore, Sasuke looked at Naruto. "Teach to walk on water." "Why should I?" "'Cause I need it to become strong." "No, that's okay, you can learn on your own." Sasuke started to bitch about wanting to learn now, but Naruto just shrugged him off. Anko hopped out of the boat and gave her thanks to the boatman. Okay, same pairing and same positions except Naruto out front. They got into their positions and started down the road. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX talk among themselves, Naruto turned to a bush and threw a kunai at it. Walking up to the bush, Naruto pushed aside some branches and looked down. Naruto jumped back and screamed, "Holy crap!" Hinata looked at him confused and walked up to the bush. She pulled the branches aside and squealed, "So cute." She bent down and picked up something. She turned around and in her arms was a small white turtle. The girls started screaming how cute it was while Naruto backed away from it. After a few minutes of crazy turtle hugging time, they started back down the road. As they were passing a lake, a mist started rolling in. Naruto started feeling like he was being watched. "Hinata, see if you can see anyone nearby." Activating her bloodline, she looked around trying to spot any chakra signatures. Looking behind, she saw one and it was moving. It suddenly stopped and one of the arms on the person flung out. Everyone down. Everyone dropped but Naruto, who just stood there. He bent down at the knee and reached out his hand. Out of nowhere a huge sword appeared in Naruto's hand. He started spinning it in his hand and flung it off to the left. There was a loud thunk and scream. Everyone turned to the sound of scream and the mist cleared. There, stuck to a tree by the giant sword, was the other brother that attacked them. Everyone turned to look at Naruto and he shrugged. "It's not like I meant to him." "Wow, not bad for a boy," said a gruff voice out of the mist. "You're right, he seems to know how to defend himself." Another more even voice. A man stepped out of the mist to the sword and pulled it out of the body. He turned and looked at the boy now standing, who had caught his sword and one of the demon brothers. He looked to his left to his fellow swordsman and smiled, "I want the little guy." Naruto looked at him and screamed at him, "I am not little." Anko looked at the two men and smiled. "If it isn't Zabuza, demon of the mist, and Kagran, spark of the flame. Two of the legendary mist swordsmen. Mitarashi, Anko, snake mistress, and Kurenai, genjutsu mistress of Konoha. What a surprise this is, Zabuza," said the now known Kagran. "Yes, it is." Kurenai turned to her team and said, "Watch and protect Tazuna." Sasuke stepped forward and pulled a kunai. He threw it at Kagran as hard as he could. It whizzed through the air, going straight for Kagran's face. Everyone looked back as he threw his head back as the kunai made contacted. Sasuke laughed. Some legendary swordsman he is. There was a laugh and everyone watched as Kagran bent his head back. There in his mouth was the kunai caught in his teeth. He spit it into his hand and threw it back at Sasuke. It was so fast Sasuke did not see it and closed his eyes waiting to die. When he opened them the kunai was an inch from his left eye. He looked past the kunai to see a hand and then up the hand to see that it belonged to Naruto. Naruto handed back the kunai to Sasuke and smiled. Next time you do something that's stupid I will not save you. I do not need you to save me Dobi. I could have caught it myself. Zabuza looked at his partner and then at Anko and Kurenai. Is he not grateful to be alive? If I was him I would be on my knees thanking him for that. Naruto answered before them, he's a prick who thinks no one can beat him. Zabuza laughed. I like you kid. Now why don't you give us the old man and then I won't have to a kid I actually like. Sorry to say that I cannot do that Zabuza. Got to finish my mission. You know how it is. I understand but, I am going to have to you all I hope you understand. Naruto nodded. Kurenai looked back at her team again. Protect him all three of you. That's an order Sasuke. Naruto looked at them and looked over to Ino. Stay with them please. Ino nodded and took out her sickles and stood behind Tazuna. Naruto turned back to the two men in front of him. Okay boys looks like we are going to get it on. Me and Hinata will fight Misty while Anko and Alexandra fight Sparks. Kurenai you are backup attack if you get a chance. That sound good. He looked at them all in turn and they all nodded. They split into their pairs and stood in front of their combatant. They stared at each other then the battle began. Naruto and Hinata stood staring at their opponent waiting for the right time to strike. They stood near each other without being right next to one another. Zabuza stared at the two as they stared back. Then he threw his sword into the air and started going through hand signs. As he reached the last one he said, Hidden Mist Jutsu. A thick mist started to form around him that spread out. After a few seconds he disappeared into the mist. Hinata. Hi, she said, then activated her Dojutsu and looked around trying to find a chakra signature other than theirs around. Looking around she could not see one then out of the corner of her eye she saw something move. Turning around she saw it moving towards Tazuna and her fellow genin. Over there, she cried out, pointing towards Tazuna. It's over. Zabuza roared as he appeared behind Tazuna swinging his sword sideways ready to take out everyone in a 7-foot radius. Right before the sword was about to hit Tazuna a clang was heard. Zabuza looked down to see the blonde brat standing there holding a sword blocking his own. Anger overtook Zabuza at seeing a mere boy block his strike. He punched the boy in the face, and on contact, he turned into smoke. Shadow clone. There was a splashing sound. Looking down he saw a sword sticking out of his chest. Naruto looked to see water coming out at where his sword had entered. He pulled it out his sword and the water clone turned into a puddle. He turned his head to see Zabuza behind him. Naruto kicked out, knocking Zabuza away towards the lake. He turned and raced towards him. You're pretty good kid, Zabuza said. He walked out onto the lake and looked back to Naruto. Naruto walked over and out onto the water. Taking up his stance of fox's claw he held his sword in his right hand upside down with his left held flat against the side of the blade. His legs were apart in a horse stance with his right just a little ahead of his left. Zabuza looked at the kid and laughed. Are you about to let one go kid? Because that's what it looks like to me. Naruto just smiled. He raised his left hand off the blade and gave Zabuza the one-finger salute. Zabuza's smile disappeared and growled, funny. Zabuza got into his stance and closed his eyes. The mist started to come around again. Naruto looked at him and said, no, that just won't do. He started going through seals and when he finished he looked up and shouted. Great breakthrough. A large gale force gust came out of nowhere and started to blow away the mist. Zabuza looked pissed and had a frustrated look on his face. He stared over at the boy he was facing off against and looked into his eyes. He noticed how blue they were, then they changed. They turned into two different colors, one red and the other white. He stared at them and then blinked and the boy was gone. That's when all hell broke loose for Zabuza. Enko and Alexandra. The pair of Junin stood off to the left of the other fight. They were staring down their opponent, watching as he brought out his swords. It was two long tiger hook swords. Both were about 4 feet long with semicircle knuckle guards that had spikes on the outside. They were solid red with black and purple flames going up both sides. They looked from the swords to their wielder. He was a short man, maybe about 5 feet 3 inches, with small legs and a long body. He had long orange hair with red streaks in the back and had on black goggles so you could not see his eyes. All that he wore were black baggy pants, red sandals, and black gauntlets showing off his muscle-bound chest and horrible burn scars that riddled his chest and arms. I get to fight these lovely ladies. I am so lucky. He smiled at them, showing blackened teeth. Alexandra and Anko looked at one another, then smiled. It is your lucky day, Kagran. You get to die at the hands of beautiful women. What more can you ask for? Asked Anko. Anko stood in front of Alexandra and got into her fighting stance. Kagran looked at the two, then put both his swords in an X form in front of him. Both of his swords burst into flames. He brought them down and screamed, "Red X!" A flaming X came flying at the two. Anko dove out of the way while Alexandra just smiled and looked at Kagran. She raised her left hand and the X hit it. Kagran laughed, thinking he had hit her full on and that he only had to worry about Anko now. The dust settled and Kagran saw to his amazement that the red head was still there, with her hand still out without a burn on it. He looked around for signs of a jutsu that was used to stop the attack, or that she might have moved then moved back, but there was nothing to show it. That was interesting, said Kagran in his usual calm voice. Alexandra smiled and reached into her back pocket. Kagran looked on, wonder what she was reaching for, when she pulled out a pair of scarlet gloves and put them on. He looked as she flexed her hand and then without warning claws shot out of the knuckles of them. As he was watching Alexandra, Anko was sneaking up behind him. When she was right behind him, she took out a kunai and was about to stab him in the back when she felt heat on her back. She jumped to the left, trying to avoid being hit. It hit Kagran and he burst into flames. When she looked over to see who had shot the fireball, she saw Kagran standing there. Come on, Anko. Did you really think it would be that easy? Anko looked at him then smiled. Yes, and it was. Kagran was confused. Looking around, he saw nothing out of the normal. He then felt a stabbing pain. Looking to his right, he saw Alexandra standing there with one of her claws stuck in his side. He pulled his hand back and hit her in the face. He looked at the wound and the damage. Kagran frowned, noticing that he would need medical help soon, but it could wait for a little while. Alexandra stood up and wiped the blood off her chin. You're lucky my master is not here, or he would you for striking me, she said to the flame ninja. Kagran had had enough of these two. He took his two swords and started to spin them in front of him. He spun them so fast a light gust was coming off them. Kagran smiled then shouted, "Dance of the fire and flame." Two jets of fire shot out of each sword in a cylindrical shape. Kagran started to laugh as he moved the flaming columns in different direction, trying to hit them. He aimed at Anko and she jumped away onto a tree. He aimed for the tree and she jumped away again. The tree was turned to ash. Anko kept jumping around but could not seem to get away from Kagran's flame of death. She was jumping from another fried ending when she slipped. She rolled on the ground till she hit a tree. She looked up dazed to see the flames coming right for her. She held up her arms to block as much of it as she could and closed her eyes. After a few seconds of nothing, she opened them to see a figure standing in front of her. Alexandra stood in the line of fire, literally. Anko watched, as Alexandra stood there with fire hot enough to turn a tree instantly into ash, hit her and did nothing. Alexandra started to walk towards Kagran with the fire still hitting her. As she got closer, you could see the sweat and worry on Kagran's face. "What the hell are you, lady?" he screamed. She looked at him and said just loud enough for him to hear, "A demon." XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX opponents and saw nothing. Where are they? While looking over his shoulder, he heard someone say in his ear, Zabuza, I see you, but can you see me? He whirled around, sword posed to strike, and saw no one. Where are you, boy? Come out and fight me like a man. But Zabuza, I am right in front of you. Turning his head, he saw his male opponent standing before him. As he watched him, he dissolved before his eyes into the wind. Genjutsu. He put his hands together, making the ram sign, and forced chakra into it. He looked around and saw nothing still. What the hell? As he finished his second look around, he felt a stabbing in his left arm, then one in his right. He looked to see what happened. When he felt more, then he dropped his sword into the water. Looking to where he felt the pain, he saw a purple mark and next to it another. He realized then that he could not move his arms. Naruto looked at the swordsman and decided to cancel his technique. Zabuza looked up to see his opponent carrying his female partner. What did you do to me? Bellowed the man. Naruto looked at him and smiled. My beautiful companion here shut down your chakra points, making it impossible for you to use your arms for a while. So give up, okay, and maybe we can come to a truce. Zabuza stared at the boy like he grew a second head. There are no truces in fighting, boy. It's not until your opponent is dead that a fight is over. That's a little too serious for me, but if you insist. Naruto walked to the land and put Hinata down. I'll go help the others and tell Kurenai-sensei to do the same. Hinata was about to walk off when she felt a hand on her waist. Turning around, she came face to face with her beloved. He smiled and dropped his head down and kissed ever so softly. Hinata fell into it, but a few seconds later they pulled away and Hinata walked off. You know, boy, loving someone will only lead to pain, said the swordsman with the useless arms. I am not worried, she can take care of herself and I will be there to protect her. Yes, but will you always be there? Said the limp-armed shinobi. I have faith that she will be fine. So let's finish this, shall we? Naruto ran towards him and punched him in the stomach, knocking him back. Zabuza slid on the water but did not go down. He ran at him again, but this time was blocked by a kick. The taijutsu battle raged on but was completely one-sided. Naruto roundhouse kicked Zabuza, knocking him into a tree where he slid down to the roots. I'll end you now with the honor that a swordsman deserves. Naruto unsheathed his sword and posed it to strike. He flew towards the soon-to-be ex-swordsman when out of nowhere a needle hit his target in the neck. Naruto felt confused, then looked at his sword, then at Zabuza. Then next to the man a hunter nin appeared. Thank you for weakening him. I will take care of him now, said the hunter nin. Hold on a second. Naruto walked over to Zabuza and touched his neck. Naruto looked up at the hunter nin and said, May I have a word with you? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX He looked at her with a shocked expression as she stood in front of him with a smile on her face and not a burn on her body. Alexandra stood in front of him and stretched out her gloved hand. She pulled it back, and when it was to its greatest potential, it went ablaze. She swung it and struck him in the face, making him fly off of the ground and rocket towards the water. When Alexandra heard a splash, she looked back to Anko and smiled. Are you okay? Anko nodded, wiping some sweat off of her forehead. Good. I am sure Master would be mad if he found out one of his was hurt or worse. One of his? Anko said, confused. I will explain later, Anko, but first I need to see if he is still alive. Anko nodded and stood up. Alexandra walked over to the water and saw him floating along face down. Hinata walked up to her and smiled. Naruto-kun is finishing Zabuza and it seems you beat the fireman. Alexandra nodded and walked out onto the water and picked up Kagran's floating body. When she flipped him over, she noticed that his face was burnt badly and that his head was facing the wrong direction. She looked a little closer and then looked up at the others. You might want to stand back. As she said this, the body exploded into flame. Hinata looked on in horror at what she had seen, but Anko walked up and pointed out on the water. Out of the smoke walked Alexandra without a mark on her. Alexandra walked up to them all, smiles. So where is Master? Hinata looked at her and said, finishing Zabuza. Should we wait for him? Anko looked over at the women and her two female students and said, no. One of you stay. Hinata, you stay and bring him to the house. The rest of us will head to Tazuna's house. Sasuke looked at Anko, opened his mouth and said, I do not listen to you, bitch. I am better than getting orders from you. Hinata and Ino paled at what Sasuke said to their sensei. Anko looked at him and smiled. I wonder if there's a difference between an Uchiha's balls in my hand after they are cut off from any other mons other than the fact that they're smaller. At that, Alexander laughed and so did everyone else. Even Shino could be seen with his shoulders shaking a little. Sasuke took out a kunai and charged at Anko. He was about to stab her when a fist came out of nowhere and smashed right in his face. He flipped end over end until a tree stopped him in mid-flight. When he looked up to see whose fist it was, he saw that it belonged to Anko. He got up to charge again when Kurenai stopped him and said, if you do it again I will put you in a genjutsu until we get back to Konoha and then press charges of you attacking a superior officer in a combat situation, which in Konoha is punishable by death or at least the sealing of chakra. Sasuke wrenched his hand out of his sensei's hand and started to walk down the road. Hinata walked up to Tazuna before they left and asked for directions to his house. After she got the instructions to get to the house, she walked over to see if Naruto was done. When she got there, she saw him talking to a hunter nin. She sat down by a tree on the shore and waited. Naruto and Hunter Nin, I really must be going. I have to get rid of the body and bring the head back to Mist, said the Hunter Nin. Okay, I'll cut the head off, then you get rid of the body, Naruto said. The Hunter Nin looked at him with what he thought must be a questioning look. Just talk to me a little, Hunter-chan, he will still be dead when we get back. At those words, the Hunter Nin jumped back and grabbed Zabuza and disappeared. Naruto looked back to Hinata and said, wait here for me, okay? He then blew her a kiss, laughed and jumped into the forest after them. After about 5 minutes of full-blown running, the Hunter Nin stopped and pulled the needle from her leader's neck. As she did this, she heard a twig snap. Looking up, she saw the boy from earlier standing in front of her with a half of a stick in each hand. I just wanted to talk. Please do not run or fight me, I just want to talk to you. The Hunter Nin looked at him for a moment to see if any of his body language showed that he might have been lying. After a minute of staring at him, she placed her leader's body on a tree branch, then turned back to the multi-hair-colored ninja. What is it you want to talk about, Leaf-san? She said, trying to sound like a boy as much as possible. Naruto smiled at the hunter and said, I just wanted to ask a few questions, make you an offer, and ask to see a pretty girl's face. At this the hunter stiffened and turned full towards him. How do you know? Naruto gave his foxy smile then disappeared. The now newly established girl looked around from him and saw nothing. She then felt something, a hand going around her waist. At this she turned and was face to face with the boy to the point of touching noses if it were not for her mask. I will not hurt you, Hunter-chan. I just wanted to be a little closer. He let her go and took a step back. She felt lost when he removed his hand. It was like she felt emptier without it. She put a hand where his just was and then spoke, "What do you want to ask, Leaf-san?" First off, my name is Naruto. The questions are just some things I like to know about you, your leader and the man you work for, but first, could you remove your mask? She looked at him for a minute then reached up and pulled off her mask. When the mask cleared her face he gasped. She was beautiful. She had long brown hair, creamy white skin, a face that would bring any man to their knees, but what really struck him were her eyes. They were just like Kami's. They held the sadness and hurt that he knew all too well. He walked up to her and reached his hand out to touch her. She backed up from him, worried what he might do with the hand. Naruto looked into her eyes and let his mask slip from his eyes. The girl saw the look in his eyes and gasped. They were like hers but showed more pain and hurt than even she thought was possible for a human to hold and still be alive. Naruto walked to her again, but this time she did not move. He put his hand on her cheek and stroked it while looking into her eyes. What is your name? She felt so warm when he touched her, more than she ever had in her life. It's Haku, Naruto-san. What a beautiful name. Haku, are you and your leader working for Gato? She was in rapture with his touch. It was intoxicating. She had never felt such delight or joy from something so simple as a touch. Yes. We are Naruto-kun. Did she just call me Naruto-kun? Haku stiffened at that. Did I call him Naruto-kun? Haku backed away thinking that he had done something to make her so compliant. She looked at him with a look of betrayal and hurt. Naruto looked at her and saw the look and said, I did nothing, I swear. I will back up and not touch you again. If it will make you feel better, you can bind my hands behind, make back. Naruto turned around and put his hands together behind his back. Haku walked up to him and tied his hands together with some wire. Naruto turned back around and faced the kunoichi. Why are you working for Gato? What do you get out of it? Haku looked at him and said in an emotionless voice, I work for him because my master wants to and I get nothing out of it but to serve him. Naruto looked over at the still incapacitated Zabuza. What are you to him and why do you serve him? I am his tool, a weapon for his use, and I serve him because he wanted me. Haku stared at him and saw the twinge of pain in his eyes when she said, wanted me. How long have you served him? What happened to make you go to him? Naruto asked sadly. Haku looked at him wondering why he wanted to know but decided to answer his questions. I was once a happy little girl with a family. A mother and a father who loved me and took care of me. We lived in a small village in Mist Country. It was a poor village but it was a happy one. I remember playing in the snow in the winters with my mother. One day as I was playing by myself on the side of the house, I did something that I never knew I could do. As I was doing it, my mother came around the corner doing it. She ran to me and smacked my hand, telling me to never do it again no matter what. I told my mother that I never would again. Little did I know my father saw me and left out to the village. Naruto noticed a small smile on her face as she talked to him about her family life when she was younger. Her face then turned to one of emotionless staring. I went out for a walk that night just around the village like I did sometimes. When I returned home, I saw the house on fire. I ran to the door screaming for my mother and father to see if they were out. That is when I heard it, screaming and grunting. When I heard the screaming, I knew it was from my mother, so I ran to the back of the house. There I saw my father and other men from the village and even some women standing around something that sounded like my mother screaming. I walked up to the crowd and saw what was happening to her. She was being raped by a man right there while people around her, people that I knew for years as sweet and nice, watched and laughed. When the man was done, he got off her and my father stepped forth. I thought he was going to hurt the man who did that, but all he did was say, "Good job." Naruto looked at her, saddened by what had happened to her. He didn't say anything because he knew the story only goes down from there. My father walked to my mother's raped, beaten, and bloody body. He looked down on her and kneeled by her head. He picked it up and pulled something out of his pocket and flicked it open. It was his favorite knife. He put it to her neck and drew it to the other side. He then picked her up as she bled and threw her into the burning house. The last thing I heard him say to my mother was, "Die, you bloodline whore." He then turned to me, knife in hand, and blood covering his shirt and running down his knife in hand. He walked to me and brought his knife up and cut my arm. At that she lifted her sleeve on her right arm and showed him a scar on it that went from the end of her wrist to her inner elbow. He looked at it and saw how jagged and crooked it was. I tried to run from him, but I ran into the villagers behind me. They started beating me and hurting me. After what seemed like hours, they stopped and parted to let my father through. I looked at him and saw my death, but I could not move from the spot where I fell. I reached out for him and asked him, why? He said that I was a bloodline whore like my mother and that people with bloodlines were evil and needed to die. He raised the knife and cut me again. She reached for the collar of her battle kimono and pulled it down. Naruto looked and blushed. He turned back to see what was there. He saw her cream-colored skin of her shoulder and looked down further to see an X-shaped scar over her heart. He looked down a little lower and saw that her S were wrapped tightly to give the appearance of small to no S, when in fact Naruto thought that they were probably a C cup. He looked back up to the scar, then up to her eyes. He told me he would carve my heart out, then burn me with my of a mother. I was scared and frightened but was waiting to die. As he got closer, something felt weird inside me. I felt like there was a cold line running down my back and neck and it started to snow. I looked up at my father with his evil glint and pulled the string, thinking that it was death calling. What happened next was shocking. I closed my eyes, then heard screaming, and when I opened them up again, everyone was dead and the house was no longer on fire. I stood up to the best of my ability and surveyed the area. It was snowing heavy and the wind was blowing hard. I looked down to see my father dead before me with a look of pure horror on his face. I left that place and moved from village to village around mist, stealing to survive. Naruto looked at her. He knew how it felt, stealing just to live for a few more moments. I was sitting on a bridge about a year after that and was thinking about jumping over the edge to end it all when a demon walked up to me. He talked to me like I was normal, asked me questions, and I told him my story. He was asked for me to show him what I could do, and I did, thinking that it could not get worse. He told me that he would like me to come with him, that he would have me with him and he would teach me. I thought about it for a few minutes and then agreed. He took me in this man known as a demon onder and treated me like I was a living tool, and I was happy. We traveled through mist and the areas around it, training, taking jobs, and fighting. I have served Zabuza-sama since I was 6 years old. I have traveled with my demon master through misty lands and more for almost 9 years. At that, Naruto smiled at that. I understand you better than anyone could. Haku looked at him like he was crazy. How could this mere boy know her kind of pain? She then remembered something that he had said earlier. What is the proposal you were talking about earlier? Naruto smiled and looked her in the eyes. Why don't you, your master and his friend, join the Leaf? We could use people like you. With your bloodline you would welcome with open arms. My village loves them. You would have the pick of the guys and would be treated like a queen. Haku looked at him in disbelief. They like bloodlines no matter what they are. Zabuza could become a sensei there and his friend too, said Naruto as loud as he could. Haku thought about it and decided to talk about it with her master. If you give me some time to talk about it with Zabuza-sama, I can give you an answer in a few days. That is fine, Haku-chan. Meet me in 5 days in the forest behind Tazuna's house with your choice. He turned and started to walk away but stopped and looked back at her and said, "Oh, and wear something that a beautiful lady like yourself should, please." He then disappeared, leaving a still dead to the world Zabuza and a red-faced slack-jawed Haku. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX worry about her Naruto. She started to pace back and forth from the tree to the water. She was about to go out and find him when she felt two arms wrap around her. She looked down to see tanned arms and white gloves. She leaned in and looked over her shoulder to stare into his equally pupil-less eyes and smiled. He spun her around and told her with a huge grin on his face, "Come with me. I have something for you." She looked at him wondering what it could be. She followed him hand in hand to the forest for what seemed like forever. They stopped. He pulled her in front of him and pushed. She went through the tree line and looked around in awe. There before her was a sea of flowers covered in a light mist. It was breathtaking, one of the most beautiful things she had ever seen. She walked out into the middle of the multicolored sea of vegetation and turned to see where Naruto was. He stood back and watched as the first person he ever loved walked out into the ocean of color. He smiled, knowing she would love it. He watched as she turned around to meet his gaze and beckoned him over. He walked out and met her in the middle of the rainbow lake. She grabbed his hands and started to spin with him. After a few times around, they fell on to the bed of soft colors, laughing and smiling. Naruto rolled over till he was lying right next to her. He turned his head and looked into her pale lavender eyes and said something he had never said before to anyone, "I love you." Hinata felt so happy. Finally, after all this time, he had said it. She had been worried cause he never seemed to say it to her. She smiled at him and rolled over to lie on him facing him. "I love you too." They kissed one another and after a moment they pulled apart. "You are the first person I have ever said that to, Hinata. I wanted to bring you here to make you remember it for all time." She smiled at him and said, "You could have said it anywhere and I'd remember it forever. The place does not matter, it is the saying of it that does." He smiled at her and wrapped his arms around her back. He looked into her eyes and said, "I plan to take Ino and Alexandra here to tell them as well, but I wanted you to be first and to know that I loved you first." She smiled bigger than she thought her face should be able to. She put her hand on his cheek and stroked the dark scar-like whiskers and he began to purr. "Naruto, my love, can you do me a favor?" "Anything, my love, say it," he said with his eyes closed and a content look on his face. "Make love to me," she said in a loving voice. At that his eyes shot open and looked at her, trying to see if she was joking. She stared into his eyes and nodded. She lifted off her fishnet shirt and started to stroke his cheek. "Naruto, I want this. I want to show you my love. Please, Naruto-kun, make me yours. I am of mind and soul, now make me of body." She begged him. He reached out with his hand and brushed her cheek. "Are you sure you want this? More than almost anything. Please, I want this." He brushed her cheek again and looked in her eyes. "Okay, Hinata, for you." As Naruto started to take off his clothes, he did not remove his shirt. Hinata walked up behind him and pressed herself against him. "Take it off, Naruto-kun, I do not care, it's a part of you and I love you." He turned to look at her and smiled. He then pulled up his shirt and threw it on the pile of other clothing. He turned back to her, then wrapped his arms around her, leaned in and kissed her. They then fell onto the ground holding one another to begin their afternoon of love. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX other two were. It had been close to 3 hours since they got to the house and it was nearing nightfall and the two still had not gotten back. She was ready to go look for them when she heard a knock on the door. She walked over to it and swung it open. Standing there were Naruto and Hinata, looking like they just woke up. "Where were you two?" asked Anko, knowing what they must have been off doing. At the question they both blushed and looked down at the ground. Anko walked up to Hinata and bent down to whisper in her ear, "So how was he?" Hinata turned as red as an apple, then looked right up into Anko's eyes and said in the most courageous voice she could, "I never knew they could be so big and a guy could be that flexible and long-lasting." At that Anko looked at Naruto, then looked down to stare at the zipper of his pants. Naruto covered it with his hands and blushed. Anko pried her eyes off her student's zipper and stared back at the two blushing teens. "Our rooms are at the top of the stairs, boys on the right, girls on the left. We start training tomorrow at 9 o'clock sharp." The two looked at Anko and walked up the stairs, separating at the top after a quick kiss into their own rooms. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX satisfaction. She closed the door behind her and spun around laughing. Sounds like you two did more than walk. Turning around, she saw that she was not alone in the room. Around her were all the other girls. She looked at Anko, wondering how she was here when she saw her downstairs. She was about to ask when Anko said, "Shadow clone." Hinata nodded and then blushed. Alexander looked at her and smiled. "So tell us. How was it?" Hinata was worried that maybe she should not say anything. She looked up to Kurenai, whom she thought of as a mother. She looked kind of upset and looked like she was going to go scream at someone, so Hinata decided to share. "It was all I ever wanted. I got to show Naruto my love in full," Hinata said with a smile. "So he made you do it? He forced you to have with him?" Hinata said, a pissed off and paranoid Kurenai. She stomped to the door and threw it open, crossing to the boys' room and throwing it open. "No, I wanted to do it," exclaimed a worried Hinata. She looked around the room and could not find him. She looked at her team and asked in an evil voice, "Where is he?" They all pointed at the bathroom door in the corner. She walked over to it and kicked it in. Standing there in nothing but a pair of boxers was who she thought was Naruto. She paled at seeing him without a shirt on. There looked to be scars riddling his back. There was what looked like words branded and what looked like moving tail tattoos spread across his back. Naruto turned and she paled even further when she saw his chest that was even worse than his back. He walked over and calmly shut the door. Kurenai walked back over to sit on the bed in the room. After a good 5 minutes he came out of the bathroom in his shirt and a pair of shorts. He looked over at Kurenai and smiled sadly. "If you want to hear the story behind what you saw, sensei, then I ask that Kiba and Sasuke leave the room." Kurenai nodded and looked over at the two boys. "You two leave the room, go downstairs and do something. Do not come near this room till we say so or come out." Kiba and Sasuke looked at their sensei, then Sasuke spoke up, "Why do we have to leave? I want to see what you saw, and why does Shino get to stay?" Kiba nodded in agreement. Naruto stood up and looked at them. "You two do not know me or like me enough for me to trust you with my secrets. As for Shino, I trust him. I have a right to know anything you know, Dobi. I am an Uchiha, an elite, and any secret you have can be of use to me." He turned to sit down when he was pulled off his feet and thrown out the door. When he landed, he turned back to see Alexandra where he used to be. She looked over at Kiba and asked in a menacing voice, You want to go for a ride or walk out yourself? Kiba walked out the door grumbling about not getting to hear anything. Alexandra picked up Akamaru and handed him to the dog boy, and take your little dog too. That being said, she slammed the door, then put her hands on the front, and after a second a red shimmer appeared over the door then disappeared. That will make sure no one interrupts us, said Alexandra as she walked back and sat next to Kurenai on the bed. Naruto walked into the middle of the room and looked around at where everyone was. Shino was standing to the right of the bed while Kurenai, Alexandra, and Anko were sitting on the bed. Hinata was standing next to him and Ino was on the left side of the bed. He looked at each one of them in turn and then focused on Shino. How long have you known about me, Shino? Shino looked at him then answered in his usual emotionless tone, since I started school with you. Naruto nodded, still looking at him. You were one of the only person that sat next to me throughout our school years. Sometimes you even got up and moved to sit next to me on some of my worst days. Once I even remember, after what I am about to show you, you came to my apartment cause I was not at school for a week. For that, Shino, I thank you more than you can ever know. Naruto walked up to the bug boy, as he was called by those who did not understand him, and hugged him. Shino stiffened at the contact but loosened up after a minute. Naruto backed away from him and bowed. You are a good friend of mine, and for what kindness you have showed me, my clan will always be there to help you and yours. Hinata stood up and walked up to Kurenai. Before we talk about what you saw, let me tell you something. Kurenai, I asked him to make love to me. I was not tricked. He did not want to at first, but I begged him and he did it for me. Do not worry, I used the birth control jutsu we are taught in school in the kunoichi only classes. He told me that he would not do it because he was scared I would get pregnant and ruin my life with his baby. Kurenai looked from Hinata to Naruto then back. Kurenai sensei, I love Hinata. She is the first person I have ever loved. I want her happy and that is what made her happy. I just had to make sure that I would not ruin her life. Kurenai nodded to him and smiled, happy that her ex-student was happy and that man she loved was considerate to her life and feelings. He looked at each of them in turn, starting with Hinata. She showed no change in color or in composure, but he was not surprised she had seen and touched the show. She just looked at him with a hungry look like he was a drug and she needed her fix. He smiled at her and continued on. He looked over to his one true male friend. Shino, for the life of him, still had on his neutral face, but you could see that he was drastically paler and you could hear a faint buzzing noise coming from him. Naruto looked down to see his longtime friend clutching his hand tightly to the point of it turning a slight purple. Looking back up to his face, he saw something that he never thought he would see from Aburame, a single tear rolling down his face. He nodded and continued to the next person. He turned to look over to see his flaming-haired fox. She had a look on her face that could only be described as a face of pain and true sadness. He walked up to her and pulled her down so he could whisper in her ear. We will talk later, okay? He let her go and looked her in the eyes. She nodded to him and he kissed her on the forehead. When he turned to walk back, he heard someone fall. He turned around to see Ino on her knees crying and saying something low in a quick fashion. Naruto walked over to her and kneeled before her. That is when he could hear what she was saying. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He grabbed her chin and lifted it up so he could see into her eyes. After a second of eye contact, she looked away again and pulled her knees to her chest. She started to rock back and forth saying the same thing and crying. Ino, you have nothing to be sorry for. You have never hurt me. At those words she got louder in saying she was sorry. He looked over at Alexandra and said in a sad voice, take her into the bathroom and tell her slowly about some of the things. When I am done I will knock on the door and then talk to her myself, okay? Alexandra nodded and then walked up to Ino and gentle picked her up. When she was about to enter, Naruto heard Ino say, "I do not deserve him." Then the door closed and he felt a barrier go up. He turned back to the others in the room with a sad smile on his face. He looked over at the last two people he had not looked at to see looks of pain on their faces. Anko could not believe that her student had so many scars and burns on his body. She had interrogated people and hid them by doing less. She was also shocked to see that he had more scars than her mentor Ibiki. Kurenai, on the other hand, had never seen anything like it. He looked like he had been diced up and fried. How could anyone survive something like that and still be sane? Naruto looked at each of them in turn again and then started to spec. Since the age of 2 I have been beaten, stabbed, branded, skinned, poisoned, and raped among other things. At the word raped, everyone in the room turned a little green. Let me tell you all now that I can heal almost any wound within minutes if not seconds. He took out a kunai and sliced the back of his arm, letting the ruby liquid well up and drip out. He waited a minute or two, then took a cloth and wiped the blood off. He showed the audience his arm that was now clean and slice-free. He then explained to them that after years of him healing from beatings, that the villagers started to experiments to see what could leave a scar on his super healing body. He told them about the villagers' different attempts using everything from bleach to manure. Then one day one thought about salt and burning them before the healing could begin. That had been the ticket, as they soon discovered. He then told them about the branding, about how the men who had did it had been people he knew and trusted. Naruto explained that he had gotten home late one night when he was 8 and was heading to bed. He heard a knock on the door and went to answer it to find his neighbor and 2 men that would sell him clothes and food at good prices. He invited them in and was asking them questions when his neighbor had grabbed him and thrown him on the floor. He then explained that 2 of the men held him down as his neighbor took out the special brands and made them white hot with a fire jutsu. They then branded him to the point that they were searing the bones on his back. They then flipped him over onto his devastated back and held him down hard as they branded the front. He talked about the men then when finished pouring salt into the wounds and then pissing on him. They left him there to sit covered in salt and piss as they destroyed his apartment and burned his 2 only possessions, a book on the bugs of Konoha and a stuffed frog he got on his 8th birthday from 2 random people. As he told them about those gifts, he cried for the first time in the whole speech. Shino and Hinata knew what he was talking about because they were the ones who got the gifts for him. It made them both sad and happy that he remembered but had lost the gifts. Naruto continued on about how no one had found him for close to 3 days. He then went off into the story they were all afraid and also could not wait to hear. He told them how that one day when he was 9, a woman from at a local store had asked him if he would like to come out with him and meet her daughter who was around his age and have dinner with them. He explained to his listeners that when he got to her house and he met her daughter who was a fellow ninja in training. At this they all gasped. Someone's mother that they knew had raped their friend. This was kind of scary for them and were wondering who was this mother. Naruto continued on to say that it started to rain and she asked him to spend the night. He agreed, thinking that this woman maybe would take him in and be his mom. She sent her daughter to bed saying that I was going to sleep on the couch. She brought me to a room and said I was going to sleep with her. I thought that it was okay, she was going to treat me like a son. She brought me into the room and told me to lay on the bed and close my eyes and I would get a big surprise. They looked at him wondering how he could stand there showing no emotion and say all this. Hinata was worried that he would break down soon or go into a depression. I did as she told me to and after a few minutes I felt things tied to my wrists and then my ankles. She told me to open my eyes and I did, to find her standing before me and myself chained to the bed. She tore off my clothes and she did it. She raped me, laughing, saying that she would have a child with a bloodline. She laughed as I cried and begged her to stop. She said that I would give her the power to make her clan strong and powerful. After a few hours she throw me from her house. She calls me names and pretends like nothing happened, so I guess no baby. Hinata was on her knees crying her eyes out. She stood and walked to him, grabbing him. She hugged him to her. After a good few minutes she pulled back and looked him in the eyes with a look that could a grizzle bear in its tracks. Tell me who she is so I can her. Naruto looked at her and smiled. He bent down and kissed her. Thank you, but I will take care of it, okay? He then looked around to see murder's looks coming from the whole room. I will not tell you her name. I told myself I would her myself one day. They eased up a little but still looked mad as hell. He then told them about the rest of his life, about the looks, the violence, and being alone. How he was told about the Kyuubi and how he'd the old woman and how he decided and set out to accomplish his suicide. He walked up to Anko after putting his shirt on. He knelt before her and hugged her. She was surprised but hugged him back. You picked me up and took me to the hospital. You brought me my Hinata to me. For that I will always be in your department. If you ever want or need anything I will give to you or get it if it is within my power. He then bowed before her, raised up and kissed her forehead. Anko was shocked and blushed a whole new shade of red. For one ninja to give their department to another was like getting marriage, in that it is a vow, one that will be there all your life till paid. She could ask for his life for him to be her slave and he would have to do it or be dishonored forever. She had never had a department like this given to her, though she had given it to the Hokage when he spared her. She looked at him and nodded. He then turned to the bathroom and walked to it. Before he reached it he turned back and smiled at them. I am going to talk to Ino. You guys can talk to yourselves and ask Alexandra any questions you need answered within reason. She knows all of my secrets. He turned back around and knocked. The door opened to show Alexandra with a slight frown and no sign of Ino. He walked past Alexandra to see Ino in the tub. He turned his head and looked at Alexandra. How far did you tell her? Alexandra looked at him and smiled. I just told her all of it but did not mention the woman's name. The whole time she sat there saying she was sorry. Naruto nodded and smiled at her. Answer any questions they want except who you are and the name of the woman. Also please would you put a barrier up when I shut the door? She nodded and walked out the door. He walked over to Ino and sat on the floor next to the tub. He smiled and looked at her in the tub curled in a ball shacking. He could see her tears and said, I love you Ino Yamanaka. She stopped shacking and looked up into his eyes. He leaned in and kissed her, making it soft but putting as much love as he could into it. She hugged him to her and cried even harder. You should not love me, you big baka. I used to think you were stupid, that you never knew pain cause you were always so happy, and I used to say such mean things to you. He smiled and laughed. It is okay Ino. Do you know will help with my pain and yours? What I will do anything Naruto-kun. I want to make you feel no pain. If I could I would do anything for you to never feel pain again, she said in the most sincere voice he had heard. Tell me you love me and that you want to be with me forever like I want to be with you, he said, stroking her cheek, smiling his goofy grin. She jumped at him and started kissing every inch of his face he could. She pulled back with a laughing Naruto smiling up at her. I will be with you now and always. And know that I have loved you since you took me in. He smiled and stroked her cheek. Let's go back out to the others and talk, okay? Ino smiled a devious manner and said, why not test out this barrier? She said, wiggling her eyebrows. Naruto laughed and smiled. Is that what you want? Our first time in a bathroom in someone else's house? She looked at him for a second then nodded. Let's have some fun, lover boy, said Ino as she s her hand down his pants. Naruto woke up to a feeling of warmth on his sides and back. He opened his eyes to see a mop of red hair on his face. He smiled and tried to move his arms but couldn't do it due to the two weights on his arms. He smiled as he started to wiggle his fingers. After a minute he heard giggling, then a few seconds later full-blown laughter. Okay, I'm up," said who he thought was Ino on his right. "Naruto-kun, that was not nice," said a sleepy-sounding Hinata. He let out a small laugh, then leaned up and kissed Alexandra on the cheek. She turned her face into his and started to kiss him back. She started to move her hands down his sides as he brought his to her hips. It was then that he noticed she was clothes. "Alexandra, what if someone walked in? They would say what a lucky bastard you are," she said with a smile. Naruto smiled and sat up while pushing Alexandra up as well. "Come on everyone, up and get down for breakfast." After a quick shower and a new change of clothes he headed down to get some food. As he made it to the stairs he could see everyone sitting down and eating. As he walked up to the group he was all smiles and took a seat between Hinata and Alexandra. "How is everyone this morning?" He looked around the table and got nods from some and others stated, "Good," except for the two beat-up boys at the table who did not reply. After about 30 minutes Anko called both groups of genin into the front yard. As they formed into their teams on the lawn Anko began to talk. "Now that you are all lined up I need to ask what your team can do." "Kurenai," Anko said. Kurenai walked up to her team and asked each of them to give their names and what their skills were as a ninja. She pointed at Sasuke first. "I am not telling them anything. Why should I give them knowledge of myself when I know nothing about them?" said Sasuke in a demanding voice. Anko smiled and disappeared. She reappeared behind Sasuke and cut his cheek, then licked it. After a minute she turned around and spit it out. "That is the worst tasting blood ever." He team began to laugh at this till she turned back to them and they were quiet. She turned back to Team 8 and looked at the Uchiha. "You will do as I say or I will write this up as insubordination on a now ranked mission which I can use for right now with no ramifications under Konoha law. It does not matter if you are the last of anything. You will do as I say or you will be tied up and left in your room for the remainder of the mission at the very least. Now answer what I asked of you, genin." Sasuke did not speak for a full minute, sizing the special jonin up. Then began to answer. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha and I am a assault fighter. I use my family's fighting style of the intercepting fist and will one day hold the Sharingan my clan Dojutsu. I usually use fire jutsu." Anko nodded and pointed at Kiba. "My name is Kiba Inuzuka and I am a assault and tracker nin. I use the dog's fang fighting style and with my partner Akamaru we can track and incapacitate opponents with our teamwork." She moved her finger on the last member of the team. "My name is Shino Aburame and I am a tracker and long range. I use the destruction bugs that were colonized in my body to scout and weaken opponents through their abilities to devour most substances but most chakra." After that Anko took up a thinking pose for a few minutes then spoke. "What chakra control exercises do you three know?" Shino and Kiba said they knew tree climbing and were learning the water walking. Sasuke said he knew none of them. Anko looked dumbfounded. "Okay, you two will go practice the water walking with Hinata's help and Sasuke will go with Alexandra to start tree climbing. Ino will come with me to learn more of my taijutsu and Kurenai will go with Naruto and help him with the different types of genjutsu." At this Kiba smiled knowing he would have some alone time with Hinata and Sasuke smiled for similar reason for his time alone with Alexandra. "Oh, and ladies, if they give you a hard time, hurt them. Be nice till you feel that they have overdone it, then do what you have to," Anko said with a huge smile. The two girls nodded and walked off with their students to an area equipped with what they needed. As the two small groups disappeared, Naruto smiled at Ino then walked off with Kurenai to learn more about genjutsus. With Alexandra. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX They had made it to a small clearing with many large trees. Alexandra stopped and pointed to a tree. You will climb that tree without using your hands. Sasuke looked at her. How do you expect me to do that? You will push chakra into your feet. If you add too much, you go flying, too little, you fall and go boom, she said, smiling. Sasuke got to work and after 20 minutes stopped and walked up to the redhead. Why are you with the Dobi? You could be with me and be treated as a queen and have anything you want, said Sasuke in a superior tone. What I want is to survive my master and to love him forever. To make him the happiest person in the universe, she said. Why not have me as your master? He does not deserve such a beauty as you. Only I can make you happy. Plus I want you and I always get what I want even if I have to destroy the Dobi to get it, said Sasuke in a strong demanding tone. She looked at him for a second then started to laugh. You think you can destroy my master? He would you faster than you could blink. He is stronger than any genin and many chunin. Plus I love him, I don't even like you, she said with a snicker. That Dobi will never be stronger than me elite. He is just a idiot who got lucky and got that sword and you as his whore. He probably has no idea how to please you or any woman. But do not worry, I will take it all away from him myself or get the council to do it for me, he said with a snicker of his own. In a second Sasuke was slammed against the tree he had been using. First of all, I am no one's whore and neither are the others. Second, he is smarter than you or by a long shot. Third, he is a man among men, he can do things with his body to mine that I have never seen or heard of. Finally, if I ever think you are going to even hurt my master, I will go out your brother and lay him before you, she said, starting with a sneer and ending in a huge smile. She let him go and walked back to the tree she was under. You have been warned. Now get back to work. With Hinata. Hinata, Shino and Kiba walked for a short distance to a good-sized river. Hinata pointed out across the river, you will meet me over there. She then walked across the water as if she were still on the land. After 30 minutes Shino had made it across and back 11 times. They sat watching Kiba fall into the water over and over again. After another 10 Hinata got up and walked out to him. What you need to do, Kiba, is change the current of the chakra at your feet. It has to move with the water but also float on it. Kiba just looked at her, not paying attention to what she said. After a minute Kiba reached his hand out like he was asking for help out of the water. Hinata, being the nice person she was, reached down to help him up when he pulled her down to try for a kiss. When she noticed he was bringing her down farther than needed, she pulled her other hand around and punched him in the jaw, putting as much chakra as she could into it. The result was Kiba laying in the water face down, moving downstream. Hinata walked back to the side of the river, smacking her hands together to get the Kiba off her. She looked down at the dog standing next to Shino. He won't do that again. Don't worry though, he'll either drown or wash up on shore. With Naruto. Naruto stood in front of Kurenai looking on, waiting for instruction, cause no matter what, when it was learning new things, he was still that little boy who itched to learn about being a ninja. Okay Kurenai sensei, what kind of genjutsu are you going to teach me? Kurenai smiled. She had finally found someone who was truly interested in genjutsu, someone who she can share her vast knowledge on the subject. What I am going to teach you, Naruto, is the 4 types of genjutsu. There are 4 types. I thought it was just one, said a slightly confused Naruto. No, there are 4. The first is nightmare genjutsu. This type is used as a scare tactic, a way of showing what they are truly scared of. This type is not usually used in combat, but when it is used to see how strong the opponent is based on how quick they break it. I think it will be different with you cause yours seem to not be breakable as far as I know. Naruto nodded. The second type is Dream Genjutsu. Much like the first, it is not used in battle a lot but can be. With Dream Genjutsu, you can show someone their greatest wish, desire, or the one thing they want above all else. The most effective way I have found this is to change your image in their mind to fit someone they love or lost. It will be harder for them to attack someone they love. Naruto smiled at that. He thought that Dream Genjutsu would be more fun for pranks. The third type are called Perception Genjutsus. These genjutsu are used in combat the most. They are used to change something in the way your opponent perceives things. It could be the movement of a kunai being thrown or even the feel of the wind around them. The smallest change with this type of genjutsu could win a battle. Naruto nodded. She made it sound like it was the best so far of the types. The final type is physical types. This by far is the hardest of the four. You can with this type actual make an opponent believe that they are hurt or hurt worse than they are. With genjutsu you are changing the way and how of chakra flow through the brain. With enough knowledge on how the chakra pathways work in the brain, you can make them feel the pain they have already to double or even triple. You could make a cut feel like a deep gash or a headache feel like their head will explode. Naruto just stared at her. He thought that genjutsu were only illusions, but this made it feel like it should be a more sought-after field. In all of his wisdom, Naruto could only think of one thing to say: cool. Kurenai smiled at that. Okay, so what I need you to do is try the first three on me, then I will help you with the fourth. Naruto nodded, then activated his Seikigen. With Ino and Anko. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX could show Ino something new or correct an error made in her form. Okay Ino, let's take a break. Okay sensei. Ino ran over to the side of the under a tree and plopped down. After a minute Anko came by and joined her. They sat quietly under the tree for 5 of so minutes till Ino spoke up. Have you ever been in love, sensei? She asked. Anko looked over at her student with a sad expression. Once a long time ago. It was more like puppy love really. Who was it, sensei? It was my old sensei Orochimaru. Before I found out he was a true evil bastard. She said with a sad tone. It is okay, sensei. I understand that in a sense. I thought I was in love with Sasuke until I took a closer look at everything. I found that I was in love with a selfish, arrogant little boy with a god complex. When I started to see Naruto really see him, I saw some of me and also something else, something more. She said with a smile. Anko got a devilish smirk on her face at the mention of her male student. So tell me Ino, how is he? Ino looked off into the distance with a smile on her face and a pink on her cheeks. He is the most loving man I have ever met. He holds me to him and I feel like nothing can hurt me. The soft brush of his lips on mine drives me crazy. He makes my body go ablaze with a touch of a finger and a batting of an eye, but the best part about him is he sees me as an equal, and that even though during our childhood I used him to make myself feel better, he forgives me. I would do anything anywhere for him if he only hinted at it. Anko was shocked at such a declaration. She had never heard of a man being so passionate, caring and so forgiving. Do you love him? Ino looked at her sensei and smiled. I do, more than anything. If something were to happen to him I would die. Anko nodded and looked out towards the sun. She was wondering what it felt like to be loved, to be held in the embrace of someone that loved you for you and not just the way you looked. Sensei. Yes Ino. She said, still staring off. You do know that he loves you, right? That Naruto wants you, said Ino while watching her sensei's expressions. Anko looked over to the blonde with a weird expression. Why would he love the snake whore of Konoha? Why would a man with 3 beautiful women want a whore to be with? She asked with a straight face. I do not believe you a whore sensei, you just like to act the part. I don't believe Naruto thinks so either. For the why I do not know, ask him, she said with a smile. They sat there for another few minutes, then Anko got up. Okay, time to continue. 4 days later. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX out. He looked at the clock to see that it was only about 10 and he was alone in the living room due to everyone else going to bed. As he sat there think about what he was going to say to Haku, he never noticed his sensei walking down the stairs. "Naruto, what are you doing up?" said Anko. Naruto looked up to see Anko in what could only be a long shirt and God knows what else. He smiled at her with a light dusting of pink on his cheeks. "I am waiting, sensei." "For what?" she said, confused. "I have a meeting tonight with the hunter nin that helped Zabuza. I made them a offer to come to the leaf and join us," he said with a smile. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked, sounding lightly hurt. Naruto exhaled and looked his sensei in the eyes. "'Cause I did not want to get anyone hopes up or be shot down before they had a chance to answer." "That was not your choice," she said. "I know, but they do not seem so bad and I thought they could do with a second chance," he said, smiling. Anko nodded and sat down next to him. After a few minutes, Naruto got up and walked up to the door. "I need some, sir, so I am going for a walk. Would you like to join me, sensei?" he said, looking back and reaching his hand out with a smile. Anko looked up to his hand, then to his face and into his eyes that twinkled with such life. She reached out her hand and when they touched she felt warm. It was a sensation she had never felt in her life. As she stood up she kept a hold on his hand. As they walked out the door into the night air, Anko felt a new feeling than she ever had. She felt more alive, more free. They walked a little ways to a tree by the waterfront. When they reached it, Naruto sat down and Anko sat next to him. "Ino says you're in love with me." Naruto looked into Anko's eyes at this and smiled. "She's right, I am." Anko looked into his crystal blue orbs looking for any weakness in that statement and was truly shocked to find none. "How can you love me? You know who my old sensei was. So who cares? You know I hold the Kyuubi, yet you do not turn away or say or do anything about it. I love you because you are smart, funny and treat me well. You are the first person that from the get-go treat me like you do any other person. Not even Iruka did that. I love you, Anko, cause we both know what it's like to be hurt by those we are meant to protect." Anko looked at him for a second, then looked away out to the water. "What about your other girls? What will they say? They know already. They do not care. Do you really care if you love someone and know that he will still love you too if it means your true shot at love? Real love," he said, turning her to look at him. "I guess not. What makes you think I want to even try? Maybe I want to be alone forever," she said with a neutral expression on her face. Naruto smiled at that. "Everyone deserves a shot at love. If you want to be alone I will let you, but I will make a deal with you." Anko looked at him for a second then nodded. "Okay. What is it?" Naruto smiled. "Gotcha. I was told by the girls that they knew I was their one the first time I kissed them, cause they said it felt like their hearts were going to explode. If you don't feel that when I kiss you I will never bring it up again, okay? I swear on my Nindo." Anko looked at him, just looking into his eyes. "Fine, but it will mean nothing." Naruto leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. He put all his feelings into everything he felt for her. After a minute he pulled back and stared into her open eyes. "So," he said. "Sorry, nothing," she said with a neutral face. Naruto stood up and nodded. "I got to go meet Haku. I will see you later, sensei." He turned and walked away, and as he did he let a single tear slide down his cheek. What he did not realize was that if he had turned around he would have seen his sensei curled up in a ball crying her eyes out. As he disappeared into the woods he never heard her. God, I am in love with him. I cannot get involved with him, it will only cause him more pain. In the forest behind Tezuna's house. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX When she looked around, she found a fallen tree and sat on it. As she sat waiting for the blonde and orange-haired ninja, she looked down to give herself a once-over. She had decided to take off her wrappings, for now it made moving 1,000 times more comfortable. Haku looked down to see how she filled out the beautiful pink kimono with the sky blue sandals she was wearing. She had decided to let her hair down and not wrap it up like she always did. Why am I dressing up? Is it because he said he wanted me to? God, what is wrong with me? She sat there waiting when she heard a slight melody flow through the forest on the wind. Look up Lugia's song from Pokemon. She sat there and listened as it flowed to her. It was so sad but then more uplifting as it continued. After another few minutes she stood to find where it was coming from. As she walked through the woods following the stream, listening to the music as it came to a sadder theme, she started to think of her past, the pain she felt and knew, and as it became louder and more upbeat she thought of her time with Zabuza and smiled. As she came to a clearing she saw a tree that hung over the stream, and as she looked up she saw a figure sitting in the tree with his back against the trunk. The moon was behind the figure, making the outline more vivid and even gave amazing beauty to the person. As the music began to crescendo, the moonlight hit the stream and sent a glow to all the water particles in the air, giving off a true show of fantasy and magic to the scene. The music stopped and the figure's head turned to stare at her. Haku gazed at the person and wondered what kind of person could play something so beautiful. "Who are you?" she said out loud without realizing it. The figure moved its arm across its face, wiping away what she thought were tears. Then in a swirl leaves he disappear and she felt an arm wrap around her waist. The arm pulled her back into a strong body. She just stayed against the man for a minute, feeling a warmth she had not felt since her mother's death. She felt safe. "Hello, Haku-chan." Haku jumped out of the stranger's arms, recognizing the voice of Naruto. "Naruto-kun, you scared me." "Still-kun, huh?" thought Naruto with a smile. "Did you like the music?" "You are the first person to hear it," he said with a smile. "What was the instrument you were playing? It sounded so beautiful," asked Haku. Naruto pulled from his pocket what looked to be a lumpy orange potato. "It's a ocarina. I got it when I was 4 from my Gigi-san."